I'm going to just quickly introduce the project. This was a year-long engagement between Zcash and LeastAuthority, but I'll let the experts get into it right away. Thank you so much, Liz, Paku.
Hi.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Liz, take it away. You first.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, yeah, as introduced, we are the security ecosystem support lead for the Zcash community, and this is for the entire company of LeastAuthority. As Helen mentioned, we do security audits, and yeah, we want to talk today about the different kind of structure that has been set for this engagement between LeastAuthority and the Zcash community, and share with you all our experience in doing that, and also talk about, yeah, how it's this kind of different approach to security can be of particular benefit to communities or to projects and stuff. So yeah, a little bit of background about this. I think Paku can talk about it from like where the Zcash community was coming from, because this approach originated there, and yeah. So I'll let you go ahead and talk
Yes.
about that.
Well, hi everyone. Yes, I'm Paku. I'm currently working as Zcash developer relations engineer. I'm specifically a grantee from CCG that is working with many teams and in many things, and this is one of them. I have the great pleasure of working with a team like LeastAuthority, and this specific role, like the Zcash ecosystem security lead, um, it it was originally it was the idea of Taylor Hornby, who was a security lead at ECC, and then he started to had this idea of working independently for the ecosystem instead of being appointed to one of the organizations of the ecosystem, and he spun up this role where the original idea was to do an audit, like a full audit a month, and his grant was like for a whole year. So there will be ideally like 12, major audits, and his all of his previous audits can be are public, and I think that are published in his website, which escaped my mind just in this very moment. So I'm gonna look it up. But the idea of this kind of engagement was to provide a continuous auditing and security practice involvement in the community, instead of like grabbing one project and auditing it, and then the audits will be in charge of the individual teams, and they will depend on the resources those teams had. This ecosystem role has brings the opportunity to make kind of a holistic approach to security, where it's not only up to each organization to audit their projects, like the community projects can be audited as well. So grantees that are, for example, involved in an important project can then request, instead of like in their grant putting an audit milestone, they can say, okay, and then this could be audited by the security lead team from the ecosystem. So that dynamic was found like to be really positive, and then Taylor Hornby decided to step back for a bit and take some time from the auditing, and the role was considered so vital and important for the whole ecosystem and for the whole teams, that CCG decided that they needed to put this request for a proposal to find a new individual or a new team that could continue to be on this role, and well, here we are. That's kind of the lore of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I found the link that I think you were talking about, the ZecSec website.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just shared that in the chat for everyone. That was the previous website set up by Taylor, and you can see all the work that he did there. Yeah, so yeah, when the RFP was posted by the ZCG, the Zcash Community Grants program, they do some of they along with, I think, Zcash Foundation are basically the organizations funding in the space, the Zcash community. So yeah, they put up the RFP, and of course, Least Authority answered because we were interested in this role. And we ended up we ended up being selected basically, and then started the role. I think it was just about a year ago now. Exactly. And
Yes, I think it is.
yeah, and what's been a little bit different for us, because we have a whole team instead of us being one person, is that we can scale differently in terms of like audit timing needs. So that's one thing that's changed a little bit. So we can do multiple audits at once, or have other months where we don't do an audit. So I think that's been interesting to see that kind of difference too. But and yeah, for us, we've worked within ecosystems before, but not with this kind of exact structure. And so from our perspective, it's also been really interesting to be able to, yeah, really get into an ecosystem with it in mind, that we know that there's a commitment on both sides to work together more. And so there's more incentive for us to be even more invested as a team. And then, yeah, that I think that both sides know that there's incentive to build that relationship a little bit deeper, instead of just, looking for that, one-off audit transaction kind of relationship. Yeah.
Yes, I think that culturally was a big shift. Like Zcash always had this culture of having important cryptography or security organizations review the protocols and perform audits. But this kind of engagement also fostered this culture and nurtured the whole ecosystem. When like back in the day, I used to work for like flow source kind of companies, and the audits, like the word audit was so like shocking and disruptive, and people will get nervous and, oh, here they come, the auditors, we need to get our things in a good shape and whatever. And this is like totally the opposite. Our problem, like with CCG and myself, like the talk that I have with them, this isn't like the kitchen. So Liz doesn't know this, but it's like everyone wants their project to be audited. So we need to prioritize, and like it's not like you would expect, or my prior experience like 10 years ago working for like corporate software, where auditors were like some kind of ghost that people were afraid of. Like now here everyone wants their project audited. I did this thing, I want it audited. When can my new library can be audited by LeastAuthority? Like everyone is like super eager to have their project audited. That is like crazy. It totally shifts like the culture behind the typical development that one can be used to. So I think that was the most positive thing I found in this kind of engagement, that helped us build a positive narrative behind getting audited and being audited, which is not someone from the outside that is coming to see if you have any skeletons on the wardrobe or something like that. Is to understand that there's a team that is going to come and help you. It's a team that you don't engage all the time with them. They're, they have their objectivity, but they're going to help you make your project better, more secure, more resilient, and to be up to date with the best security practices. So that was, I think, golden for everybody, because it shaped our culture, and it stepped us up really good. Like everyone from the highest development teams to the most casual contributors, they all are super fond of like being audited, which is super weird to me, but that's how it worked.
So for each individual project that goes through the auditing process, does it have a way of submitting or talking to the auditors about maybe specific areas that they're looking to get done? Or is there a kind of a more boilerplate process for the auditing, and then it gets specified for each project? Because obviously when you have a long-term engagement like this and you have multiple projects, there's a lot to cover. And so how do you begin to scope down with this kind of work?
Well, I think that we like CCG is the Zcash Community Grants, and the projects that get audited are mostly the initiatives of that are funded by Zcash Community Grants. So the committee has the whole picture of what grants are being executed, which ones are near completion, which ones are maybe in maintenance, or so they know the whole life of the grants that are and projects that are being developed at the moment. So then there's a discussion on which ones are the most important and most critical to then present to the security lead team, in this case LeastAuthority, and then there's a back and forth conversation on priorities and budget and all, because obviously we don't have a budget to have everyone audited at once, so there has to be prioritization, and there's a timeline, and there's some projects that need to be audited in a given timeline because they're going to be live in a certain date or something like that. So those things get sorted out, and then they get put into some sort of queue to put it in a way that then it's discussed based with how LeastAuthority can arrange the different audits, and they are the ones that give us a scope and how many days they would take. So it's a really dynamic conversation between the committee and LeastAuthority, and like I'm kind of like looking at the side, or sometimes I'm the fly on the wall, and maybe I intervene here and there, like asking someone or contacting someone, but it's a conversation between the committee and them. I don't know what Liz can tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think so our role is also, it's quite transparent what our role is within the community, and we've tried to make ourselves as accessible as possible, or like in how we present ourselves. So like for logistics, there's the Zcash forums, and we are posting there about the audits that we're doing and things like that. So there's kind of two ways that projects come to us. It's the maybe three. Projects requesting directly to the ZCG that they're ready for an audit or would like an audit. The ZCG recognizing that a project should have an audit due to like timing, et cetera, like Paku mentioned, that and priorities. And then sometimes they'll come directly to us and say like, because they might have questions about like how it works or something. And then, yeah, we all kind of get to the ZCG and LeastAuthority and Paku all talk together about, okay, we just basically respond to the priorities of the Zcash community as those, and then, our side is to check on like our availability and, how we can make that work on our schedules and our side. And then, yeah, the scope is, either presented to us or negotiated with us, depending on the circumstance.
Excellent. It's really great to hear that even in longer term engagements, that kind of special customization that needs to happen when we talk about audits for open source projects is still happening.
Definitely.
On a scale this large, where you're talking about both time and number of projects happening, like you said, if there's multiple happening per month, that's really it's great to hear.
Yeah, and that way we still treat every audit like it's its own audit, that it's not being grouped together in the same way. It's more of the overall structure of the relationship. Because what we've seen and I've heard from other communities, when you don't have an auditor that's kind of just there and available, like with some kind of ongoing bigger relationship, is that, like Paku was saying, every project has to individually figure out how to get an audit. And depending on the community, that could be like, both funding and, who's going to provide the services. And, there are some communities that might have the funding pool available, but there's that service discussion of like, who's the service provider going to be? And, we've talked to, because again, we're doing work outside of the Zcash community, and we've talked to these other people, and whether it be the project or the protocol team or whatever, there's often some, difficulty, like friction around that kind of experience, because the projects don't always know who to go to. And then so they're going to have, each project's researching like all the possible providers, and then they're possibly having to like, talk to multiple parties about funding and stuff like that. And it's just, they spend most of their time doing that. And whereas in the Zcash community, they don't have to worry about any of that. They know that like the ZCG's got their back in terms of supporting them for like the security audits, and that, LeastAuthority is this team that's there and available. And so, they can just concentrate on their development activities, getting ready for the audit, and they don't have to worry so much about the logistics. Even though there is still the scope and schedule kind of conversation, it's just a lot smoother. So I think that that's one major benefit, I think that's there for them.
Yeah, also like in terms of procedure, like one thing we implemented that was super useful is that the nature of Zcash Community Grants is not it's a lot of professional teams, but also grassroots, like a grassroots movement of devs. So a lot of people that may be working in very important things are really committed to Zcash, are very good developers, and maybe they are self-taught developers, like really cypherpunk, and they had never gone through an audit in their lives. So we came up with this idea of saying, hey, I said, hey, Liz, can we make a small brief document of like the very basic things that you could do to have your open source project be well structured for in terms of for the eyes of the security auditor. Like, what are the best practices of structuring your repo? What information should it contain? How should it be, like the disclosure policies, how they should be, and like have that in a little document, because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of things that you're going to audit that they're going to have the same things reported over and over, because this is like so grassroots. Like, it's people that, even though they're super great coders, they might not, like, if you didn't work in a very big firm, you may have never been through an audit of this kind. So it's really normal to not know what to do in front of like a team of auditors. So this kind of arrangement made it possible, because we could have this feedback loop between LeastAuthority and the development community that even helped the audits be more thorough, because we could establish a common ground of requirements that the auditors wouldn't have to be reporting all the time, like, oh, you're missing this disclosure email and this publicly, because, like, yada yada yada. It's like the ABC of something, and that would be already nailed out in most of the cases, so they could focus on their time, which is boxed in deeper things.
So just real quick, I'd like to invite folks who are in the room, if they would like to unmute themselves and contribute to this conversation as well, you can start to do that. I did want to ask you did answer one of my questions, kind of more about the long tail when you have a project this long and you're starting to resolve issues. How do you do that? Does the time frame change when you have a kind of more long-term engagements with audits, or are there kind of not rules, but timelines that you try to stick to with even longer individual engagements as a partner, unless like an auditor where some people think it's like in and out,
So when it comes to the audits, I mean, they're very similar to, like, again, a normal one-off audit when we're doing the audit, but because we have this relationship, we can also do some other stuff a little bit more flexibly. And even those audits, like if something happens that we need to extend or shorten it or something like that, there's, it's easier to do that because of the established bigger relationship. But yeah, we can also do things like consultation sessions where, or just like short calls or something like that. That we don't get taken up on those as much as the audits. Those are definitely more popular, but like things like the consultation sessions, I think, can also help in situations where a team isn't quite ready for an audit. And they just, they might want, just an opportunity to dive into a particular aspect of their project, or of the security of their project. So yeah, there is some different kinds of flexibilities that are afforded because we're not having to worry about a contract every single time, or, what happens if the schedule has to change? What does that do to the funding mechanism or something like that? There's just a little bit more flexibility there.
We can, as OSTIF, definitely speak to a bit of the time and energy suck it is when you're spending a lot of time doing administration, just setting up those things, and they're so important. They really are worth the time and energy. But when you're safe, when you have an engagement like this, it sounds like it really does smooth that over and kind of make it a lot faster to move through those mechanisms you need to hit. Bassem had a question in the chat. He asked, does Zcash or LeastAuthority provide any resources or guidelines for individuals interested in getting involved with security audits aside from published reports? Paku, you're unmuted. I'll let you go first.
Well, and if you're referring to, like, if you were a Zcash Community Grants grantee, yes, in that case, you would actually get in touch with the committee, or maybe the committee gets in touch with you, or I do on behalf of them, and then this talk about your project will begin, where you could start to think about like your project being audited, and then this thing where we could I either just give you as maintainer some guidelines on like the overall structure and basic things that any basic project structure audit would actually go through, and then your project would be scheduled for an audit, and then from there forward is mostly like an external audit kind of procedure, where it's really formal, and you would expect to have an appointment with the auditing team. Your project will be scoped. The resources you need to provide for the auditors will be put in a sort of a inventory, where that will help them scope out the audit, and then the normal procedure will carry forward. Those are like the kind of resources that are involved in particular. We kind of don't have a, I don't know, school of auditees would be because I think we also want to keep it like formal, although like LeastAuthority is an important vital part of the ecosystem. It's also very important that they remain objective, and also kind of external, to put it in a way, because that's the role of the auditor.
Really well put.
Yes, if I could jump in as well. We're always open to connecting with people in the security community and security researchers, and I'm sure LeastAuthority and other security companies are as well. So, please feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'd be interested in seeing what kind of security work and research that you do, and seeing if there's a way to get more involved in the kind of collaborations that we do that make meetups like this possible. So it's always nice to see other people from the security research community join in and reach out and express interest. So thank you for that. And then I had one other comment, just that kind of something that struck a chord with me, you could say, is when you were mentioning having multiple parties involved, like the ZCG, an independent party to kind of help be a catalyst in the process. That's something that really drove the creation of OSTIF as well. You know, we saw that there is a lot of administrivia and a lot of moving parts in doing something like this, and projects are already, you know, typically strapped for time and resources and don't have the expertise to find all these companies, and like you said, and so one of the things that drove the creation of OSTIF was being a organization, an example like ZCG, a catalyst or a body to help make this work more possible and easier to materialize. So I think I've noticed that in a lot of situations, having that kind of at least one independent party involved in an engagement like this, especially in the open source space, really helps a lot because, um, again, it's not like a team working for the same company where they all kind of have the same objectives and kind of have the same, let's say, managers or bosses, for example. Um, so I think having a strong independent party to at least help catalyze the process is very effective, and that's something that we've seen with our experience and working with different open source projects, and then funders who want to make some security outcome a possibility and not really knowing where to start. And so that's why a third party like us or many other groups out there I think are a good option. So just something that struck a chord with me there. Thank you.
Well, that kind of is a great segue into this next question. And this goes out both to LeastAuthority and to ZCG, because I think both points of view on this question are incredibly important and informational. And folks, if you've got points of view to add on this, please. But do you believe it's more effective for an auditing entity to work with a client during the development and the organizing phase, where they're still figuring out the roadmap developmentally to do things right, or is it in the let's audit after the fact phase, where you're really kind of reaping the benefits of the lack of security work early on?
I guess I'll start. Yeah, I think unfortunately the answer is it just depends. It depends on the project and what they are, I think it depends on the scope of the project, or like what's being built. And also the experience of the team that's building it. And that experience can really vary. It's not to say that that it's just one facet of their experience. It's different. It depends. And like I said, it also depends on what they're building. So in some cases, in the design stage of what they're going to build, or the art, like when they're architecting things, the security risks are well known, and the solutions to like remediate or mitigate those risks are well known. And so then in that case, and the team knows it. And then in that case, there might not be that much need for security research team to be involved at that design stage. It might be pretty straightforward for them. In other cases, like one of those factors could be like, less easily determined. And so then, getting security researchers involved at that stage could be helpful. So, you're doing something maybe a little bit experimental. You're using new cryptography that you're not used to using, or, maybe it's new cryptography that's not battle tested out in the world or something like that. Those kinds of different scenarios, or you're building something really complex with lots of, integration points where that could expose risks or something. That kind of stuff is where it might be useful to have security researchers involved at that stage. And, there's different ways to involve them. It could just be like, hey, we've got a few questions. Which library should we use? Something like that. Other points, it might be like, hey, can you look at our design documentation, look at our architecture, choices that are specs, etc. And so then, kind of design review is but it's not required. But there could be places where the team is perfectly fine to go through design and development and then get that support through just the audit at the end. I don't know,
Yeah, second.
Paco, if you want to add anything from what you've seen specifically in the Zcash community.
Yes, I can think of a few cases where I think that in projects that integrate to complex systems, like could be a DEX or a bridge, and then having a security research team be involved in the final stages of that design phase is really important, because threat models, for example, are something that when you read a threat model, is like coding. You can read a threat model and understand it perfectly, but it's a very different thing when you have to sit down and put your teapot or brew some coffee and have some mate, whatever, and write your own. So having a security research team that has this expertise of these all of different domains that could and different parts of those domains that they've worked on could apply to your project, it's tremendously valuable, because all of these scenarios that you might not have seen or foreseen would be suggested to you, because the auditors know so many different projects that they have all this collected background that will make them see through the cracks of your threat models, that when you wrote it, you said, oh, this is rock solid, I love it, and then they will come and maybe they rip it off completely, and that's perfect, because if they didn't, someone else would when your project is in production. So the best thing you want to do is to have a research team say, hey, you're forgetting about Mallory and Malice and all these like fictional characters that are evil people, or just curious people, or people that just want to bother you and tinker with your project. And having those evil's personas into consideration in the threat model of your design is super important. And you hadn't written a single line of code, but you already fixed a lot of problems, and you saved yourself from a lot of problems. So I think that's the most important thing, to have a research team in this kind of like early stages of a project.
Absolutely. It's great to hear both perspectives on how that integration happens, of like the security and the development pipeline and when. Smurry, we love threat modeling. That's so true. It's great to hear. I know you guys have got some current audits happening right now. I know you said this started a year ago, but you've got 3 currently happening. Or sorry, 2 with 3 so far. So a total of 5 over the year. Has the process changed at all as you've done some of the audits? Has there been any like things that happened that made you realize that you needed to adjust what was happening or where and when? Any thoughts as to that process?
Well, from our perspective, yeah, I mean, I think the latest is we've got 4 audit reports published that are available. Yeah, and February was a busy month. So I think some of the data you have is from a little bit longer. And then we have another 1, 2, 3, 7 that are somewhere in different stages. So it's been quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, we've learned different smaller lessons over working. A lot of the projects that we've worked on, there's been, quite a bit of difference. I mean, I think that the one thing that is particular is just that there are certain waves depending on what's going on within the ecosystem. So like the protocol upgrades, et cetera, and their kind of impact, or like other kinds of developments that are important, will cause like a wave of need of audits. And that's been, that's one thing that we've noticed. It's not like always a steady stream of of things within an ecosystem. And so again, that's where it's been advantageous that we have a whole team that we can kind of scale up as needed. And we also have different, like, various skill sets that we can kind of call upon. So the cryptographers versus the, security research engineers, and kind of pull them in and mix and match as needed to address those needs. But yeah, I mean, I think that it still feels like there's a lot more that we could do within the community. It really feels like we still just got started, even though it's been a year.
That's such a great perspective for security too, right? It's even doing those point in time audits, you feel like there's just not enough. And now hearing like it's just not it's never enough time for security, I think. And it's really great that these have been moving forward so quickly. I love to hear that my data is out of time. That's so good to hear that so much more has been happening. So looking forward to this year, is there anything you're looking for in terms of emerging risks in like privacy-focused cryptocurrencies like the Zcash? Is there anything that's happened this year that you guys are looking for in particular in these upcoming audits that took out of the news or out of a blast somewhere?
I don't know if you want to call out anything. I mean, I know that the ZSA stuff in the Zcash community is exciting.
Yes, I think that there are a lot of things going on. The biggest milestone for is this network upgrade 7 change in the Zcash ecosystem, where we have this original consensus node, which is called Zcash D, which is an originally fork of Bitcoin Core 2015, which has its backports fixes from the Bitcoin Core upstream, plus all the zero knowledge stuff and the Zcash protocol. And we are working, a lot of things are working together to just deprecate that old monolithic kind of full consensus node that has a wallet and whatnot, like Bitcoin kind of style of node, moving to a more modular and modern infrastructure like the Zebra node, which is fully coded in Rust, and then building other infrastructure that will complement the consensus node with indices and data availability and full node wallet and all of those projects. And that's going on one side, and we're doing that because we also want to add a new thing, which is Zcash shielded assets, which is called ZSAs or ZSAs, which are shielded assets over the Orchard protocol. And that was one of the major audits that were performed recently, the Orchard ZSA protocol. And it's something that is being expected by the community for a while. This protocol has been in development for quite some time, and it has a lot of built up energies, expectations, and well, having an audit on it was quite a milestone for the project itself. So there are a lot of things that we are actually building and will need auditing. And we have the Orchard CSA one is I think that the one that is in everybody's expectations and exciting things that are coming.
It's a great point too, Liz, in the chat. You guys have a really active Zcash community on the forum. And I noticed that a lot of references for this work was posted on the forum. How has the community feedback been? How has it, how have people like thought about these audits?
Yeah, I don't think in terms of the audits, like Pakus mentioned earlier, everybody's been incredibly positive about getting security audits. Like we're not seen as I don't know. Usually I mean, usually people hire us because they want us to audit. So, I mean, but in the case where you have like another party involved that is like saying you should get these audits done, you know, that's where sometimes I guess the attitudes could differ, but the whole Zcash community has been incredibly positive about that. I mean, I think that also just stems from from the very early days of Zcash, they were prioritizing security audits and, you know, the impact of security research within the community and how much that matters because, you know, again, being like in the privacy space, that they know that security is pretty fundamental to the work that they do. And so there's always been an attitude of acceptance there, but it's definitely been incredibly welcoming and wonderful community to work with because, yeah, they're very supportive of the work that we do. In terms of like feedback on the audits, I mean, we get feedback from the project teams from ZCG. You know, I don't know, security audit reports are mostly for the development team, sometimes for other stakeholders to read. So we don't usually expect to get a ton of feedback on the reports themselves, but if anybody wants to give us that, we're always welcome to hear it.
Yeah, I think that it's for the most involved Zcashers, they are pretty motivated and happy to know that the applications and the protocols they are using are actively being audited. So the sometimes these audit updates are very liked post on the forums. So it's like something so nerdy, but it's so I find it like it's kind of like nerd cute as well. That have like auditors be like beloved and appreciated. To me, it's like super important that to know that the wallet I'm using for my everyday transactions, it's being audited, and the libraries that it's using are deemed to be safe at some point in time, but by auditors, it's something that it's peace of mind, which is super valuable these days. When you download the average crypto wallet on the App Store, and if you're not like super involved on the data community or ecosystem, you don't know these kind of things. And for Zcashers, like they're super privacy minded, security minded. They have a high standard of expectations of what to expect from their core team. So they expect this like you know, super careful kind of design. If you read the protocol, you would see that the spec of the protocol is really carefully crafted, and like the bar is super high within the Zcash community, and they won't settle for for less either. So I guess the feedback has been positive, and well, the audits and the results have, to me, have been super fruitful and positive at the time being.